The document we will use today is from the in-class handout, In-Class Practice. We are down here looking at this code. Today we talk about nested if statements. Thus far we have seen an if-else statement where there's a true part and a false part to an if condition. If this condition is true, we execute these two statements. If this condition is false, we skip these statements and execute this statement. Any number of statements can appear inside the true and the false part of an if statement. Here is the same statement again with if statements entered into the true and the false part of this outer if statement. When a if statement appears inside of another if statement, we say that the inner if statement is nested inside. We call it a nested if statement. In this case, we have a nested if then else in the true part and a nested if then else in the false part. We could have a simple if nested in the true part. We can have a multiple alternative if nested in the true part. Also notice that the indentation here kind of indicates where the nesting takes place. We see that the outer if statement, true part is indented and false part is indented. On Visual Studio, this indentation will automatically occur for you as you type in your code. When you're writing your code yourself, you have to be cognizant of the fact that you need to create the indentation. But by creating this indentation, it makes it easy to understand where the true part of the condition is and where the false part is. If you look at this inner if statement, its true and false parts are also indented. So we can easily see that in this nested if statement, if this condition is true, here is the true part of it. If this condition is false, here's the false part of it. So how do we execute a statement like this? When we come upon the first condition of the outer if statement, if the condition is true, we look at only the true part of the if statement. We skip all of the false part, we execute the true part. In this case, this apple equals apple plus 10 and this total equals total plus peaches will always be executed when we get in the true part of this condition. So this statement will execute and this statement will execute. But which statements will execute in the nested if statement depends on the result of this condition. If this condition is true, we'll do these two statements. If the condition is false, we'll only do this statement. So if this condition is true and this condition is true, we will do this statement, these two statements, and then this statement before exiting the entire structure to execute this output statement out here. If this condition is false, we will skip down here to the false part of this outer if statement, execute total is equal to 15, and then we will figure out which one of these parts we will execute based on this condition. If this condition is true, we will only do this statement and get out of the entire structure. The way we figure out how this code works is we plug in actual values and then we use those values to trace through the code to see if it's yielding exactly what we want it to yield. So what is a trace table? Over here we have a trace table. A trace table is simply a listing of all of your variables involved in the program and then a section for output. We use the trace table to kind of walk through the code as if we were the computer to see exactly what the code is producing. In this example, we're going to go through it 2 times with values for apple, peach, and pumpkin already initialized. So in the trace table, we're going to make apple 10, peaches 20, and pumpkin 10. And then once we set those values, we're going to trace through the code. The first thing that happens here is total is equal to 0. So we're going to make total equal to 0. The next thing that happens here is we look at this condition. apple greater than peaches? Well, is 10 greater than 20? No, it's not. But because this is an or, we must go on and check this other condition. If we get a false with an and, we can stop. But with an or, we can only stop if we get a true. So the second condition is pumpkin not equal to apple? Pumpkin is 10 and apple is 10. So this condition is false because 10 is equal to 10. Because these two conditions are false, we go down to the false part of this outer if statement. And in the false part, the first thing that happens is we set total equal to 15. Now we discussed that in a variable, we can only have one value. So the 0 gets overwritten, and now the value in total is 15. Once the value in total is 15, we then go to the next statement, and that is an if statement. If peaches is greater than 10, 20 is greater than 10. So we set the message variable to you are here. And now we've executed the true part of this statement, so we're done with it. We skip the false part of it, and we go out and print the message, you are here, 15. Now, for the sake of room here, I'll try to put this over here. And this would be the output for this run of this program. I'm going to do another one by erasing all the values that are here. This time we start with the values of 5 for apple, peach is 10, and pumpkin 40. The first thing we do is set the total to 0. So let's set the total to 0. And then we ask the question, is apple greater than peaches? Apple is 5, peaches is 10. That condition is false. But the or says we only need one to be true. Is 40 not equal to 5? That is true. Because 40 is not equal to 5, we're now going to go inside of here and do the true part of this outer if statement. The first thing that happens is apple is equal to apple plus 10. How do we execute this statement? We get the original value of apple, add 10 to it, and then stick it back into apple. Assignment statements, as you remember, we take what's on the right and assign it to the variable on the left. So what happens? The new value in apple is 15. We then come upon the next condition, which is if peaches is equal to 10, then, and it turns out that peaches is equal to 10. So we're going to do the true part of this condition and skip the false part. The true part says message should be equal to nice work. I'm going to put nice work here. And total is equal to total plus apples. Well, apple is 15, total is 0, 0 plus 15, total then becomes 15. Now that I've executed this statement, my next thing to do is to jump down to this statement. Remember, this statement was not a part of this inner if statement. As soon as this was true, I knew this statement was going to be executed regardless of what happened in this inner if statement. So now this statement says total is equal to total plus peaches. So I take the value of peaches 10 and total 15, add them together, and put it back into total. Total becomes 25. Now that total is 25, I get out of this entire structure, go down here to the bottom, and I print in my message box again, 25. Now, I'm only writing this way because I don't have enough room on the screen showing these side by side, but I would write nice work dash 25 all on one line if I had the opportunity. Okay, on the sheet, you try to do the third example. Your answer should be grade fine 30. For this segment, you will need this document that was handed out in class. It's a staple document with 2 sheets on it. We're going to be looking at the if exercises, tracing the if exercises. For the next example of code, we have A and B. With A, we're going to use initial values of A and B, -5 and 5, and then you'll use initial values of 10 and 8 for A and B. So here's the trace table for this segment of code right here. Notice in this segment of code, there's an if statement with another if statement nested inside. The statement nested inside is an if then else statement. The outer one is a simple if statement, which means if this condition is false, we don't do anything. We only venture in here if this condition is true. And in the first case, we see that A is equal to -5. -5 is less than 0. That's true. So we're going to go in here and look at this inner if statement. This says if B is a negative number, do A is equal to B. But if it's not, do A is equal to B plus 10. And it turns out that B is 5, and 5 is not a negative number. So we're simply going to do A is equal to B plus 10. So what happens in this case? Well, B is 5. We add 5 to 10 and store the result back into A. So over here, it turns out that, again, a variable can only hold one value at a time. So this -5 goes away, and the new value here is 15. 5 plus 10. So in this blank right here, we would write the value of A is 15 and the value of B is 5. The value of A is 15 and the value of B is 5 after this code executes. So now you take a turn and make the initial value of A 10 and the value of B 8 and see what happens. And then when you're done with that, try this code down here. In this code here, we have an if, simple if, nested inside the false part of this outer if statement. In this next example in our trace table, we have variables age, weight, and total. The initial value in A for the age is 20 and the weight is 40. We're going to take those values and then trace through this code to determine what the results will be. So the first thing that happens here is total gets the value of 0 again. And then we come to this if statement. It says if age is not equal to 23. Well, age is 20, it's not equal to 23. Total is reassigned the value of 40. And then we come to the next if statement. That if statement says if age is greater than 23, age is 20, it is not greater than 23. This is an AND condition, so the entire condition is false. That means we go to the false part where total is equal to total plus 7. Total becomes 47. We come out of this if statement and go to this last one. It says if age is less than 23, 20 is less than 23, this is an OR condition. This is true, so I don't even have to check this part. And this statement says total is equal to total plus 10. So total becomes 57. Once all these statements are done, the output statement is total is equal to 57. Again, for the sake of room and writing style, hopefully you can read that total is equal to 57. You have two more entries here, B and C. Try it yourself and see what you get for the outcome for this program. In this next example, we have two variables, fruit and quantity, and of course a section for the output. So we're going to trace this code right here with the initial values of apple and 8 for fruit and quantity. So we come upon this first if statement again. Here's an if statement with an if-else statement nested inside of it. And for this outer if statement, it is an if then else also. Here's the false part of this outer statement. So we come upon this and we ask the question, is apple not equal to pear because fruit has the value of apple. And apple is not equal to pear, so fruit gets reassigned the value bananas. And the initial value of apple is overwritten. So then we come to the if statement, the inner if statement. It asks, is quantity plus 2 less than or equal to 10? Well, quantity is 8, 8 plus 2 is 10, 10 is less than or equal to 10. So what happens? Quantity then becomes 2. The 8 is overwritten. The 8 is overwritten and replaced by 2. The next statement says fruit is now equal to oranges, and the value bananas is overwritten by the new value oranges. After this executes, we skip the false part of this inner if statement and go directly to this statement, quantity is equal to quantity plus 7. This statement is outside of the inner if statement, so it's going to be executed every time this condition is true. So the value of quantity is 2. We add 7 to it. The new value of quantity is 9. And by the way, these values are overwritten, and the value in quantity is now 9. Once we execute this statement, we skip over the rest of this and go directly to the output statement. And the output statement is your order, 9 oranges. And that ends. Now, please take the time to try B, C, and D on your own and see what you come up with. I have posted the answers to all of these, including this one that looks like the first example that we went through, for you to get more practice.